Okay everyone, welcome to clip number 2. In this clip, I'd like to add the physics components required to allow our character to interact with the world. Right now, if we take a look at our knight player simply has on it a transform and a sprite renderer. Now watch what happens. Let me just drag my game view over here for a second, and I'm going to set it up for maximize on play. That's going to make the entire screen fill with the game. Watch what happens now when I hit play. Absolutely nothing. My character is simply hovering in midair. And obviously, that's not a game. That's not what we want. What we want to do is make sure that our player falls into the world and interacts with our individual platforms. We can do that with a number of different components. Two colliders coming together will have an interaction, so we know our character is going to require some kind of collider. A rigid body is an object or a component that we can add to this particular character that will allow it to be affected by the physics. Now, if I want to add a brand new component, I'm going to go across to the inspector with my knight player selected, and I'm going to say add component. I'm going to go to physics 2D. Physics 2D because we are making a 2D game. At the very, very top is rigid body 2D, and I'm going to add that to my particular player. Now, it's been added automatically, and I'm going to kind of leave it in its default state right now. There's a number of different things we can do. We can affect how heavy it is, how much drag is on it, how much angular drag is on it, how much it's affected by gravity. There are a ton of different things we can actually do to this. But for now, let's just watch what happens. I'm going to hit play. And now my character is automatically being affected by physics. And that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. Now, my character unfortunately fell through my platforms, and that's not what I wanted. We're going to have to go through and add ourselves a collider to make sure that our character can collide with the platform colliders we added in the first module. Let's go over to our player once again, ensure your player is selected. Head down to your Add Component button, and once again go to Physics 2D. In Physics 2D, we have a number of different options. We have, again, box collider, circle collider, edge collider, etc., etc. The ones that I'm particularly interested in for this particular example is the capsule collider and the circle collider and the box collider. Now, I'm going to start off by adding a simple capsule collider to this character. And when I do, if we scrub down and take a look at that capsule collider, when I do, we can see we've added ourselves, in the scene view, we can see we've added ourselves the capsule collider to our character. Now, right now, it looks like a simple circle, and it can be edited, just like we edited the box collider we added to our platforms. We have the option to change it with the offset, the size, etc. I'm going to use the Edit Collider button once again, and I'm simply going to drag this collider so it fits my character. And I'm really just defining this character's hitbox, the area in which this character is going to interact with the world. By defining this particular area, only within this particular area will my character collide. My character will not be able to bang his plumage on anything. He won't be able to hit his sword on anything. Only this area within the collider is going to interact with things. Now, with that in place, watch what happens when I hit play. My character falls and lands on top of my collider on the platform. My player's collider is interacting with the platform's collider, allowing my character to stand on top of it. That's great. My character is being affected by physics, and they are colliding with other objects within the scene. That's perfect. Now, you might wonder why I chose a capsule collider when we have so many other options. There are a number of different reasons. Let's go over those. The capsule collider has a rounded bottom, and I really like that. A rounded bottom means nothing's going to be dragging. Nothing will be dragging along the ground when my character's interacting with. Let's say I had chosen instead a box collider. The box collider has 90-degree edges. It's a box. It has 90-degree corners. Those corners will allow this character to drag along and maybe get stuck on little offsets that you might have in your platform. If you've created your platforms and they're not perfectly aligned, your player might not be able to bounce over the individual colliders. That's terrible. By adding yourself a rounded bottom collider, you're going to be able to ensure that your character can zip over those little inaccuracies. This is not the only collider to allow us a rounded bottom. Obviously, we could have chosen a circle collider. And let's take a look why we might want to do that. I'm going to turn off the capsule collider by simply going into the inspector and clicking on the little tiny check mark. That little tiny check mark will turn off the capsule collider. It's no longer affecting my character. What I'm going to do, I'm going to scrub down. I'm going to find the Add Component button, and this time I'm going to add a Physics 2D circle. Now, once again, we could go through and we could adjust this circle so it's an appropriate size. I can adjust the radius, for example. Let me just make it a little smaller right there. just like that, let's say. Now that would be perfect. This is a small size. It's got a really big area. Now my character his sword's being affected, his plumage is being affected, everything's being affected. You might think that's wonderful. And maybe for your particular game, it might work. Now, the only problem I have with this is the size of this circle. Look how much extra space I've got in these edges, right? I've got all this area around my knight that's actually adding in as a hitbox. If someone tried to shoot this guy or hit this guy, it's going to hit this collider way over here. It's not actually going to show on this character at all. So I don't love the circle collider for that reason. But what if we added a compound collider? Meaning, what if we added several different colliders together to kind of make the shape of our knight? That could be an option. What I'm going to do is once again reduce this radius of my circle, and I'm going to make it much smaller. Let's say about that size. That's pretty good. And I'm simply going to move this downwards afterwards by adjusting my offset. I'm going to move it downwards. Let's scrub it a little bit. Let's say right about there. Right about there. Actually, let's make this a nice round number. Let's put this at 0.35. Should do it. 0.35. No, 0.4 should do it. 0.42. I'm being a little weird about this, but there we go, 0.42. All right, so we've got this circle collider at the bottom of our character, right at the base of his feet. So once again, we've got this set up so that the character can slide over any little inaccuracies within our level. So that's great. But now, the entire area up here is no longer colliding with anything. That means that if someone shot an arrow at our knight, the arrow would simply pass right through his body and not hit him at all. What we can do is add an additional collider. I'm going to make a compound collider by going in and once again saying add component. When I do, I can say physics 2D, and in this situation, I'm going to add a box collider. Now the box collider itself is going to be very large. It's going to, just like our platform, it's going to be the entire size of the image. Once again, I'm going to go into my box collider and I'm going to adjust it so it's an appropriate size. So I'm going to put it right about here, about the midway of the circle. And I'm going to squash it down. Now, I'm intentionally going to leave this little area here, and I'll explain that why in a second. I'm going to scrub this down like that, and I'm going to scrub this down like this. Now, you might look at this and say, great. The circle collider allows my character to roll over any inaccuracies, and the box collider on top allows my character to have a larger hitbox. They can interact with the world in many different ways. The problem with what I've done here, if I scrub in so you guys can see this, the problem with what I've done here is I've left this box collider hanging over the edge. Right? There's an area here that's sticking out. I've got a 90-degree angle right here on the side of my character. Yes, it makes sure his hand's in place, but that is not why I want to do this. If I've got it like this, my character can get stuck on different platforms. I don't want that. I want to make sure that if I'm using a compound collider like this, I have a nice, smooth area that can't get stuck on other platforms. I'm going to make sure in this particular example that the box collider is inside of the diameter of my circle collider. Now, if I take a look at this, that works really well. I've got a rounded bottom and a great area for my character to collide with. If I hit play, it's going to work identically to the capsule collider. See, it worked exactly the same way. Now, one of the benefits of using a circle and box collider together is if you had an animation where your character wanted to squat walk or wanted to duck down or something like that. If I'm going to turn off my circle collider for a second and my box collider, and turn back on my capsule collider. The capsule collider is one solid piece. If my character was to duck down, so his entire image would squish down as he's squat walking or something like that, we would have an area above his head that wouldn't be turned off. That would mean that our character could still be affected, even though they were squat down, they'd still be affected up high, up at this regular height. So if we want to build an animation, for example, where our character was walking underneath a small ledge or through a little cave or something like that, and our character had to squat down to fit inside the cave, we wouldn't be able to do it with the capsule collider without adjusting its size pretty dramatically. However, if we were utilizing both a circle and a box collider together, what we could do in code is whenever our character squats down, we could turn off the box collider. So this is what would happen in code. We'd turn off the box collider, our character would squat down, and now only the circle collider defines the area of effect for our character. Our character could now walk under low-hanging ledges, enter a cave, or anything else without actually being affected by the world. So that is a really good reason why you might want to consider using a compound collider, a circle collider and a box collider together. For simplicity's sake, in this particular exercise, I'm simply going to use the capsule collider. I don't actually have an area where my character squats down. We're not adding any kind of squat or anything like that. So I'm simply going to use the capsule collider. If, however, you want to use the circle and the box together, you can. It's not going to affect our code at all. I'm going to remove the circle collider, and I'm going to remove the box collider. Okay, so our character is back where we had them. Now, let's take a look at animating this character.